4:02 a.m. The Strait of Hormuz was shrouded in complete darkness when 12 unknown targets suddenly appeared on the radar of the USS Spruance. There were only 47 seconds left before a collision that would shake the entire world. But Tehran had no idea that they had just triggered something the United States had kept hidden for so long. A massive retaliatory strike that would turn the most sophisticated ambush in history into an unimaginable disaster for Iran. What really happened during those fateful 38 seconds? The Strait of Hormuz is the most sensitive lifeline of the global economy, through which 20% of the world's oil, worth trillions of dollars in liquid energy, flows every single day. Under the Trump administration's strategic blockade, aimed at tightening the economic noose around Iran, the U.S. Navy had turned this waterway into an impenetrable steel wall. For the crew aboard the USS Spruance, an Arleigh Burke-class warship built by General Dynamics, everything began as a typical Tuesday. They glided through the hot, humid fog with quiet professionalism, enforcing a peace that Tehran was desperate to shatter. Over the past 72 hours, tensions had been steadily simmering. Iran's Ghost Fleet had been continuously testing American reflexes with AIS spoofing tactics, generating phantom signals on radar screens to create confusion and uncertainty across the entire operational zone. Tehran was growing desperate, searching for a trump card to turn the tide in their favor. 4:05 a.m. The silence was shattered. A group of IRGC fast attack boats suddenly surged forward at 30 knots, charging straight toward the USS Spruance along a deadly intercept vector. To deceive Lockheed Martin's Aegis combat system, they shut off their real AIS signals and spoofed themselves as neutral merchant ships, a calculated and bold gamble. Stern warnings broadcast over Link 16 were met with cold, absolute silence. No acknowledgement, no change of course whatsoever. 4:08 a.m. The fleet of boats charged forward, flouting every international maritime rule in existence. The countdown ticked away relentlessly. They had exactly 4 minutes left before reaching the kill zone. Was this a foolish mistake or a sophisticated trick designed to lure the United States into a much larger and deadlier trap? Tehran thought they were playing chess on the open sea, but they had forgotten one critical thing. The U.S. Navy dominates the digital battlefield, guided by the absolute precision of the Aegis radar system. 4:09 a.m. While the crew on the bridge of the USS Spruance remained focused on the swarm of fast attack craft closing in on the surface, Lockheed Martin's Aegis combat system suddenly and independently triggered a Level 1 red alert. This was no longer a simple surface engagement. Everything had just changed dramatically. 40 minutes earlier, mobile launchers hidden deep within the Muzandan Peninsula had quietly released a swarm of Shahid 136 loitering munitions to evade radar detection entirely. These suicide drones were flying just above the waves at an altitude of less than 100 feet, skimming the surface with deadly patience. Tehran's strategy was a true masterpiece of layered deception, using a swarm of speedboats and 3 zombie ships which had turned off their real AIS signals to transmit fake coordinates, creating massive chaos across every radar screen in the operational zone. They wanted the Americans completely distracted by the tricks on the water, while the real and most dangerous threat screamed silently through the sky toward its targets. But the USS Spruance was not an isolated vessel fighting alone. It was a single link in a vast and powerful digital network that Tehran simply could not sever. The destroyer's Combat Information Center immediately established a real-time data connection with Northrop Grumman's E-2D Advanced Hawkeye surveillance aircraft, which had taken off from the USS Abraham Lincoln on active duty in the Gulf of Oman and was maintaining a steady altitude of 25,000 feet above the operational area. Using its extraordinarily powerful UHF radar system, the Hawkeye filtered out every single zombie signal and transmitted clean, verified, and precise target data directly to the Spruance without delay. 4:15 a.m. For Boeing F divided by a -18E divided by F Super Hornets, having launched from the Lincoln's flight deck just 90 seconds earlier, plunged aggressively into the combat zone. Using Raytheon's APG-79 ASA radar system, the pilots achieved absolute and total tactical awareness within moments of arrival. In a dominant and overwhelming display of American airpower, 11 Shahid drones were shot down in exactly 47 seconds. For a brief moment, the Americans believed they had completely neutralized the aerial threat and gained full control of the information domain. 4:19 a.m. Just as the very last drone crashed burning into the sea, Tehran activated their real trap, the one they had been holding in reserve for precisely this moment. From coastal installations in Bandar Abbas, a massive electronic warfare wall was suddenly activated at full power. This was a high-powered jamming system significantly upgraded with Russian and Chinese technology, designed specifically to blind American naval vessels. Simultaneously, 6 NOR anti-ship missiles, an improved and deadly variant of the C-802, were launched from fixed launchers positioned on Keshim Island. These missiles flew at Mach 0.9, skimming just inches above the water surface, and presenting an almost impossibly small radar return profile. The Aegis display aboard the Spruance began to flicker violently and malfunction. Critical data links connecting the warship to the Hawkeye surveillance aircraft were completely severed by the intense electromagnetic interference. The countdown had begun, 180 seconds remaining. The billion-dollar destroyer was suddenly blinded and totally isolated, with 6 deadly warheads hurtling toward it at subsonic speed. Tehran genuinely believed that this would be the knockout blow. They were about to be proven catastrophically wrong. 4:22 a.m. The USS Spruance was racing against an invisible clock. From the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, a Boeing EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft pushed its engines to full afterburner and accelerated toward the fight. Carrying a lethal combination of Raytheon's ALQ-99 and next-generation jammer pods, the Growler pilot launched a devastating electronic counterattack against Iran's jamming wall. Using a sophisticated combination of spoof jamming and precision point jamming techniques, the Growler bounced the interference directly back at Iran's own electronic wall, blinding the blinder and carving a wide digital breach straight through the chaos that Tehran had created. 4:25 a.m. With communication links temporarily, but critically restored, the remaining Super Hornets switched to air-to-air engagement mode and fired a precisely calculated salvo of Raytheon AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles to intercept the incoming NOR missiles at maximum engagement distance. On the deck of the USS Spruance, Lockheed Martin's SM-2 Block 3A interceptor missiles roared out of the Mark 41 vertical launch system in rapid succession. Simultaneously, Raytheon's Phalanx CIWS, a radar-guided 20mm Gatling gun capable of firing thousands of rounds per minute, began spinning its barrels at maximum speed. 3 NOR missiles were destroyed by coordinated AIM-120 AMRAAM and SM-2 salvos working across multiple engagement envelopes. 2 others were deceived by the Growler's sophisticated electronic decoys and plunged uselessly into the sea. The final remaining missile was torn completely apart by a hail of tungsten rounds from the Phalanx CIWS at a distance of just 500 yards from the ship's hull. 4:32 a.m. The entire aerial engagement had lasted exactly 38 precious seconds. The Spruance's Aegis system still experienced some residual interference, but the radar picture was rapidly beginning to clear. The immediate threat from the sky had been completely neutralized, but the cost had been real. Significant depletion of interceptor missile reserves and a critical 1-minute loss of full tactical awareness. The ship had survived everything Tehran had thrown at it from above, but the Iranians still had one final and far more insidious layer of attack rising silently from beneath the water surface below. 4:35 a.m. The adrenaline from the aerial battle had not yet subsided when a new and even more terrifying threat emerged from the darkest depths below. While the Americans had been preoccupied with the blazing skies above, Tehran had been waiting with calculated patience for precisely this moment. Hidden for over 48 hours in the treacherous 80-foot deep shallow waters of the Strait, a Goddard-class midget submarine, a silent predator built by Iran's Marine Industries Organization, had finally begun its carefully planned mission. This vessel had been positioned days in advance, sitting motionless on the bottom, waiting and monitoring every movement above with quiet electronic patience. Operating entirely on battery power to eliminate all acoustic signatures, the Goddard was virtually invisible to standard ship-mounted sonar. It was Iran's ultimate ace in the hole, their final and most dangerous card. 4:38 a.m. The Goddard surfaced silently to periscope depth for just 30 critical seconds, barely long enough to calculate its fire solution against the now weakened and partially blinded USS Spruance. In those 30 seconds, it unleashed a deadly cocktail of underwater weapons. 4 smart mines equipped with magnetic and acoustic sensors were deployed into the water column, followed immediately by 2 UT-27 heavyweight torpedoes. The engagement distance was a mere 1,200 meters, essentially point-blank range by any standard of naval combat. Tehran firmly believed that the Spruance's sonar operators were still deafened and disoriented by the recent explosions and lingering electromagnetic interference. They believed the underwater domain was theirs. They believed the Goddard would strike before anyone even knew it was there. But the U.S. Navy's underwater detection network was already fully in place and had been watching the Goddard for hours. 4:40 a.m. A Boeing P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, operating out of Al Dhafar Air Base in the United Arab Emirates, had been quietly monitoring the entire underwater operational area throughout the engagement. The moment the Ghautar's periscope broke the surface, the Poseidon detected it immediately and dropped a precisely spaced pattern of 12 Raytheon sonobuoys into the water, instantly creating a dense acoustic detection barrier around the Iranian submarine. At the same time, a Sikorsky MH-60 or Seahawk helicopter, already airborne from Esperance, deployed a towed sonar array that bounced powerful sound pulses off the steel hull of the Ghautar, giving the crew an exact and unambiguous location fix on the submarine. And then the most stunning development of the entire engagement appeared. Silently rising from a deep-water trench that had concealed it for days was Boeing's Orca XLUUV, an extra-large unmanned underwater vehicle representing one of the most advanced capabilities in the U.S. naval arsenal. Covertly deployed into the Strait several days before the confrontation began, it had been sitting at depth, tracking the Ghautar from the moment the Iranian submarine had first settled on the bottom. The Orca had watched every movement, every preparation, and had said nothing, done nothing, simply recorded and waited for the right moment. That moment had now arrived. The Orca transmitted high-precision, real-time targeting data directly to the Seahawk helicopter overhead. The firing solution was perfect. The target was locked. Without hesitation, the Seahawk pilot launched a Raytheon Mark 54 lightweight torpedo. The weapon acquired its target immediately and ran true. The entire underwater crisis was completely and permanently neutralized in exactly 2 minutes and 12 seconds from the moment the periscope had first appeared. They thought the darkness of the deep water was their greatest ally. But in this strait, at this moment in history, the darkness belonged entirely and completely to the U.S. Navy. 4:50 a.m. Tehran had now played every single card in its hand. The suicide drones were burning wreckage on the water's surface. The Nor anti-ship missiles had been torn to shreds by American interceptors. The secret submarine, the weapon Tehran had considered its guaranteed killing blow, had been neutralized before it could threaten anyone. Every layer of the most sophisticated Iranian military operation ever attempted had been detected, countered, and destroyed. But the U.S. Navy was not finished. Not even close. The commander aboard the USS Esperance, his voice completely calm and controlled, issued the order that ended the confrontation. They tried to use our own playbook against us. Now it is time to turn off the lights permanently. The A-18G Growler was directed to push its systems to their absolute operational limits. The pilot activated the complete and unrestricted power of the next-generation jammer at maximum output. What followed was no longer defensive electronic warfare. This was offensive electronic suppression on a strategic and overwhelming scale. The Growler systematically and completely blinded every Iranian coastal radar installation from Bandar Abbas all the way to Keshem Island. Every shore-to-ship communication frequency was simultaneously flooded with impenetrable interference. Iran's vaunted electronic warfare wall was not merely overcome. It was utterly and completely destroyed, as if it had never existed. 4:53 a.m. With Iran's entire electromagnetic spectrum neutralized, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye immediately restored all high-speed data links at maximum capacity. The Aegis combat system aboard the USS Esperance returned instantly to full automatic engagement mode, operating with greater clarity than at any point during the entire engagement. The last 2 remaining Super Hornets conducted a final methodical sweep of the airspace, locating and shooting down the 3 remaining Shahid 136 drones drifting aimlessly like lost vultures above a battlefield they no longer understood. One by one, every single red hostile icon on the Sperance's combat management display disappeared permanently from the screen. The Iranian fast attack craft, their commanders watching in horror as their air cover vanished and their submarine disappeared without a trace, broke formation completely and fled in disarray toward Iranian territorial waters. 4:55 a.m. The U.S. fleet remained completely and perfectly intact. Not a single scratch marked the hull of the USS Esperance. Not one American sailor had been wounded. Not one American system permanently compromised. For Tehran, this night represented a catastrophic and total strategic defeat. Every weapon had been used. Every trick had been played. The desperate gamble to break America's economic stranglehold had produced nothing but charred debris, a destroyed submarine, and a shattered military reputation that the entire world had now witnessed. For the crew of the USS Esperance, combat alert levels were quietly and professionally lowered. Watch rotations resumed. Coffee was poured again. Reports were filed. To the outside world, This had been a 47-minute crisis on the razor's edge of igniting a catastrophic global conflict. But for the men and women aboard that destroyer, for the pilots who had flown and fought in the darkness, for the sonar operators who had tracked and killed a submarine in 2 minutes flat, it was just another ordinary Tuesday. Iran's sophisticated and multi-layered ambush had been designed with one purpose: to deliver a knockout blow that would humiliate American power in front of the entire world. But they had forgotten the single most important lesson of modern warfare. The U.S. Navy does not merely guard the world's most critical oil lifeline. It owns and controls every single dimension of the battlefield, from the highest reaches of the sky above to the coldest and darkest depths of the ocean floor below. Every domain, every frequency, every depth, every second. This was not simply a tactical victory on a Tuesday morning in the Strait of Hormuz. This was a message, clear, unmistakable, and delivered with absolute precision to every adversary on this planet. Do not provoke the eagle while it stands guard over the world's most critical choke point, because the eagle is always watching. The eagle is always ready, and the eagle never misses.